Hi everyone, today we're going to model a Bogie frame in Moment of Inspiration, and here you can see the finished model. This is what we're going to end up with, and if you want to follow along you can download a project folder which contains 3 files. We're going to model 2 of the parts of this Bogie frame in separate files. One is this part here, which I called detail 3, and the other one is this piece here, which I called detail 1, and then there's a file called Bogie frame. All of the files contain reference images that will make it easier to model these parts, and once you've downloaded the project folder we can get started. We are going to start this Bogie frame with the simplest detail, which is the one that I call detail number 3. So please go ahead and open the file that is called detail03, and you will already find the reference images in there, so we can get started right away. Let's switch to the right view, and what I'll do is I'll use a polyline to create the basic outline of the shape. So let's go ahead and grab a polyline, and we could just eyeball things, or we could create construction lines. So hold down your left mouse button and drag to create a construction line here. We'll need another one up here, one over here, one right down here at the center of the grid. Let's put another one here, and we need one more, and I'm going to create it right here. And then we can left click on any of the intersections of these construction lines to create the first point, and click on the other intersections to create our curve. And let's close it, and there we go. Next I'm going to fillet some of the points. We don't need to worry about this part here. I just separated this from the original object, and this is where this detail will be joined to the main frame. So let's go ahead and use a fillet on this point here. I'll try 20. Let's try 18. I think I'll stick with 20 here. Next we need to fillet this point here, and let's do an offset of maybe 10 or 12. Looks good. Right click to confirm that, switch to the top view, select the curve, and I'm going to extrude this both sides like so. And the reference image is slightly inaccurate, so don't worry about the fact that we're off a bit on this side. I'm going to hide that curve, and next we need to create the base here, and I'm going to do that in the top view by using a rectangle. I'm picking the center option here, and I'll snap it to the center of this object and drag this out. And I'll make this a little bit bigger than it is in the reference image, because I want to make sure that I can add bigger fillets. So something like this should be fine. Let's select our curve, go to the right view and extrude this, but this time we only want to extrude this up to here. Again, I'm going to hide the construction curve, select both of these objects, and let's do a Boolean Union, and I'm going to run a quick fillet test. Let's do an offset of maybe 0.2. First of all, we need to select the object, of course. And we can go a lot higher with this. So a fillet of 1 is still working, and we're getting nice and big fillets down here. So that's looking good. I'm going to hit escape because I don't want to fillet this right away. Let's go ahead and save that file, and now we can move on to the next detail, which is going to be detail number 1. So go ahead and open the file called detail01, and again you will find the reference images already in this file. In this one I'm going to start in the front view going to create this part here first. So let's go ahead and grab a circle. I'm going to use diameter here. And I'm going to select this and mirror it over to the other side. And again, the reference image is not completely accurate. We don't need to worry about that. We just need to make sure that everything is mirrored over properly. Next, I'm going to create a 3-point rectangle, and I'm going to snap to these 2 points and to this one over here. Then select all of the curves and trim them with the default instructions or settings here. So I'll just right click twice, then select these parts and delete them, and select the rest and join these curves together. And we also need these holes here, and for these I'm going to use another circle. And I'm going to mirror this over. And now we can select all 3 curves, go to the right view, and I'm going to move these over to here and extrude them to here. Let's go ahead and hide those curves. And for this part at the back, I'm going to use a polyline again, and I'll snap this to the midpoint of this object here. And this time I'm not going to create construction lines. I'll just eyeball this. And like before, we don't need to worry about this cutout here. So let's create another point here and then close that curve. Select the curve, go to the top view, and I'll just move this over to the center and extrude it. And we need to extrude to both sides like so. Let's hide that curve. Select the 2 objects, and I'll do a Boolean Union. And I want to make this object look a little more interesting. So I'm going to change some of the corners here and add some fillets right away. Let's select these ones and fillet them. Let's try an offset of 1. And I think that's looking good. I'm going to add another fillet down here. Let's make this 0.5. And let's add maybe a chamfer to these corners here at the back. 0.7 is actually looking good, so I'm going to keep that. Let's select the object and I'll run another fillet test. We need to decrease the radius. Let's try 0.1, and that's working. But you can see we're getting a weird fillet down here. And sometimes in order to prevent that, you just need to increase the radius a little bit. But in this case, 0.2 is already too much. We could try something like 0.13 or 4. Let's go ahead and try that. But it's not really working, so I'm just going to hit escape. In order to get a nicer transition, we need to fillet this edge down here first. So let's go ahead and hit fillet, and an offset of 0.14 is looking good. Let's try 0.1, because I do want to make sure I have a big enough distance between these 2 edges here so I can add some nice fillets to the rest of the object. So let's select the object and do another fillet. Let's try 0.2 here. You can see now we're getting a much nicer transition down here at the bottom. Okay, so let's hit escape. Let's go ahead and save the file, and now we can move on and model the actual Bogie frame. For this next section of the tutorial, we're going to need the file called Bogie frame. So go ahead and open it. You will see the reference images in there. And what we'll do is we'll start in the right view, and I'm going to create a polyline, and I'll start outside of the object like this and create a couple of points, and I'll snap the last one to the center line. Right click to finish the curve, select the curve, show the points, and let's go ahead and move some of these around. I'm going to move this point over a little bit, and I'll also move this one over a little bit, like so. And then I'm going to control drag a copy down. Let's make sure to move it straight down, like so. Let's go to view and add a little bit of transparency here. Next, I'm going to move these points around a little bit. And we need to move these ones down to about here. And then move this one back to about here. And let's make sure to snap this point to the center line. Next, I'm going to create an offset for both of these curves, and we need to do this for each curve separately. If I select both of them and try to offset them, you can see we're getting something like this, which is not very useful. I start with the top curve and create an offset like this. Right click to bring up the offset tool again. Actually, first of all, I want to select this bottom curve, and now we can create an offset for this curve. And next I'm going to fillet the points here. So let's show those points and select these two. And let's try 3, and that looks fine. And we just need to do that for all of the other curves as well. So next I'm going to fillet this one. This one. And this one. I'm just checking if everything here is at the center. Okay, so let's hide those points again. I'm going to select these curves and let's call these curve shape 01. And now we can select it in the scene browser, and it's a single object. We can still select the individual curves, and each of them has the same name, but we can also select all of them or hide all of them with just a single mouse click by selecting them and giving them a single name. Next, we're going to do the part at the center, and we're going to start this in the top view. And let's use a rectangle, 3 points, and I'm going to offset this a little bit from the edges here because it is hidden below these top and bottom parts. And this is guesswork, so let's maybe do something like this. Drag this out to about here, and then I'm going to use a circle, use the center option, snap it to the center of this line and drag this out maybe to about here. And let's move this forward a little bit. And let's select both of these curves and trim them. Right click twice to confirm the settings up here or the instructions, and then we can delete these parts and join these two. Let's go to the right view, and I'll just move this curve up a little bit to about here, and then show the points. I'm going to select these ones, and I'll just move these over and line them up with the reference image a little bit better. I'm also going to add a fillet to these corners here. So let's go ahead and select these points, and let's do an offset or a radius of maybe 0.5. And I'll move this up above the object. And before I extrude this down, I'm going to rebuild that curve because I want to make sure that I get as few edges as possible. So if I show the points and use the rebuild command, and you can see in my shortcuts here I have the plus key assigned to that command. So I'm going to use that. Right click to confirm, and everything seems to be at the center here, which is good. So let's go back to the right view. I'm going to hide those points again, and I'll just extrude this curve down to here. And you can see in the perspective view we're not getting any edges here. I'm going to rename that curve to curve shape 2. Let's go ahead and hide that. And we're going to do a Boolean merge using these curves here. And before I do that, I'm also going to rebuild these curves. So let's select them, show the points, and use the rebuild command. Right click to confirm, and let's go back to the right view. I'm going to hit Alt Q to isolate these curves. We'll probably need to make some adjustments. Let me just check this. So everything seems to be at the center here, which is good. And actually I'm going to select these points here, and I'll just move these over a little bit to here. And it looks like these points are not lined up properly. So what I'll do is I'll select these points here first, and I'm going to scale them down, make them flat. And the curve looks good here. And I'll do the same with these ones. Make them flat. And I think we need to line these up with this point here. So let's go to the Transform tab, use the Align option. Then I'm just going to click on this point here. And this will line all of these points up with this one. So let's go ahead and do that for these points as well. I'm going to make them flat and then align them with this point. And I'll do the same here. And it looks like we do need to make the same adjustments over here. So I'll just select these, make them flat, line them up, and same here. Okay, so now we should get nice and straight lines. Hit Alt Q to bring back the other object, and I'm going to hide those points. Let's select this object and our curves, and let's do a Boolean Merge, and hopefully that's working, and it looks like it does. Let's go ahead and hide the curve shape 1, and let's get rid of these two objects, and we also need to delete these two. Okay, so there's our centerpiece. I'll just hide that for now. Go back to the top view, and now we're going to create the top and bottom shapes. And I'm going to start with a rectangle again, 3 points, and make sure to snap it to the center line, the x-axis here, and I'll create the first point here, the second point here, and let's drag this out to about here. And next I'm going to use a polyline, and I'll create a construction line here, and then snap the next point to that construction line. Let's create another point here, another one over here, and 2 more. Right click to finish the curve, and then we need to get these round shapes in there. And for this area here, we could probably just fillet that corner point here. We could also try and use an arc, and let's use the tangent option, and let's go ahead and click here, and then just drag this down the line of the other curve to about here. Left click again, and then we need to pick the piece to keep. We can either keep this one or this one, and of course we want to keep this one, so I'm going to left click, and for this area here we're going to create a 3-point arc. I'm going to snap it to this point and this point, and then we can drag this arc out like this. Select all of these curves. I'm going to trim them, confirm the settings twice, and then we can remove these 2 parts and this one. Select the rest and join these. And then we're going to fillet some of these corner points. And I'll start with this one here, and let's do a pretty big offset. I'll try maybe 5, looks good. I want to make this nice and smooth. And for this one I'll do maybe 3. Let's select these 2 points here, and let's do an offset of 1 is too much, 0.5 looks good. And I'll use 3 for this one. And maybe 2 or just 1 for this one. Now let's select the curve, show the points. I'm also going to rebuild this one. So let's hit the plus key, go to the right view, hide those points. Again, I'm going to drag this straight up and extrude this curve down. And you can see we're getting a ton of edges, so that means rebuilding that curve didn't work as expected. I'll just undo that, select that curve again, and rebuild this again. Maybe I forgot to confirm the operation. So now if we extrude this down, we shouldn't get any edges at all. Curve shape 3. Oh, actually, that's not what I wanted to call it. Shape 3, and let's hide this. And we need our curve shape 1 curves again. So let's select this object and select these curves, do a Boolean merge, and I'm going to hide these curves again. Select these 3 objects here and delete them. Unhide the center piece, and now we can select all 3 of these and do a Boolean Union. And you can see we're getting a solid and we don't have a lot of edges, which should make filleting a lot easier. And if I run the fillet command on the entire object, and let's use a radius of maybe 0.1, you can see that's working just fine. The offset is a little bit big though. Let's do 0.07 maybe. And that's looking fine. But of course we don't want the edges here at the back to be beveled. So I'll just hit escape and I'll just fillet the edges separately. So let's select the object, select this edge, and because we don't have any other edges, you should be able with just one mouse click to select the entire loop here. So let's fillet this with a radius of 0.7, confirm, and then we're just going to go around this object, and actually we can select all of these curves at once. We don't need to do these separately. So let's select all of these edges and do that fillet. That's looking good. So I'll right click to confirm that. Let's go back to the right view. Next I'm going to add maybe this detail here, and for this we can use a circle. Okay, and that's looking good. Let's go to the perspective view, and I'm going to select this curve and extrude it. Maybe it's easier in the top view. I'm just going to extrude it to here, and then let's go ahead and select both of these objects and do a Boolean Union. And we still have a solid, which is good. Let's go ahead and select this edge here. I'm going to do a chamfer on this one. Let's try 1. It's too much. Let's try 0.4. Point 1. 0.15. That's a bit too much. Let's stick with 0.1. Then I'm going to select these edges here and fillet them. 0.05. Confirm that, and I'm going to add the same fillet over here. Next, I want to create the detail here on the side, and we're going to change that shape a little bit because the one that we can see here in the reference image is not particularly nice. So Let's go ahead and grab a polyline, and I'll do something like this maybe. And let's go ahead and fillet some of these points. Let's try 1 for this one. That's a bit too much. 0.5 I think looks good. I'll stick with 0.5 for this one. And for this one, and for this one as well. And maybe let's just use the same fillet for the other 2 points. So we have something like this. Let's go to, maybe not the perspective view. I guess first of all we need to confirm this last operation, and let's go ahead and drag this over. To about here. Let's maybe move this over a little bit further. And I'm going to extrude that curve. Let's do something like this. And I'm going to hide that curve. And then I'll just select these 2 objects and do a Boolean Union. And we still have a solid, which is good. Let's go ahead and fillet the edges on this one. I'll try and do a loop selection. Same here. We don't want this edge though. And this one. .05 maybe. Okay, that's looking good. Let's confirm that. And the next detail we're going to add is these parts here. And we're going to reuse a curve that we created earlier. And the curve that we want is, I think it was shape 2, no, shape 1. Shape 3. I'm going to move this down, line it up with the reference image. Let's go to the perspective view, show the points, and I'm going to delete quite a lot of those. So let's get rid of all of these ones. And over here, I'll delete these ones. Let's select this point, and actually let's select both of these and move them inside the object, something like this. I'll move these over a little bit further. And over here, I'm going to select, let's just isolate that curve. Let's select these ones here and delete them. I'm deleting the entire curve because dragging the marquee selection from the right to the left means I'm selecting the entire object. So let's go ahead and select these points here, get rid of those. And let's select this point here and again move it inside the object like this. So I think that's looking good. Let's try and extrude that curve down. And I think that's looking good. Let's extrude it down to about here. And I'm going to select this curve here, control drag a copy out over to here. Let's go to the top view and I'll rotate this around a little bit and move it into position here. I think I'll just create a separate curve for this one. So let's start with a circle. Let's do something like this. And then I'm going to use the polyline, snap to this point here. And I want to move it along the tangent for now. Maybe we should start at a different position. Let's start about here. And do something like this. I'm going to move this inside of the object. And let's see. I'll create a construction line here and then create 2 points here. Right click to confirm that. Just isolate these two, trim them, remove this part and join these two. And we're getting a bit of a corner here, so let's see. Let's select this point and I'll just move it over a little bit to get a nicer curve. Something like this. Let's see if we have a similar problem over here. This seems to be fine. I'll just select this point and do a fillet. Let's try 1.5. So I think 0.5 looks good. Let's hide those points, go back to the right view, hit Alt Q to bring the other objects back, and I think this is the other curve. I'm going to hide this. Did I just delete that curve? I think I did. So that's a bummer. Okay, let's just do that again quickly. Sorry about that. Start with a polyline this time and do something like this. You can see I'm also creating construction lines here. And I'll close that curve. And the reason I'm doing this differently this time is because I want to make sure that we don't get any creases. So now we can use an arc, snap to these two edges here, and then keep this section. And we're getting a perfect transition. So let's trim these, remove this part, join these two curves, and let's go ahead and fillet this corner. And I probably didn't delete the original curve. It was just somewhere down here. But in this case, that's not a bad thing because the one we've created just now is a little bit better than the original one. So I'll just move this straight up. Let's go to the right view and I'll just snap it up to here and then extrude it down to here. Let's hide that curve, and I'm going to select all of these objects and do a Boolean Union, and we have a solid, which is good. So let's go ahead and select these edges here. Let's see if we can fillet these. Let's try 0.1, 0.05, and that's looking good. Let's see if we can do a constant distance. Yep, it's working, and let's bring that fillet up to 0.08. And that's looking good, I think. So let's confirm that. Go back to the top view, and we still need these holes in here. So let's go ahead and create two circles. I'm going to copy this one and move it into position here. Select both of them. Let's go to the right view, and I'll just move these up a little bit and extrude them up. And let's do a Boolean difference. And select these edges here and fillet them. So 0.05 looks good. I'll confirm that. And we can delete these two curves. And now we're almost done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in our details we modeled at the beginning of this video, and we're going to combine these with our shape here and finish our Bogie frame. So now it's time to combine this Bogie frame with the details we modeled at the beginning. The question is, how do we get the other objects, detail 3 and detail 1, into our file here? Because you cannot have more than one file open in Moment of Inspiration. There's two solutions I found to that problem. One is you can open multiple instances of MoI. So you could open it 2 or 3 times, open the files that you want in each instance, and then copy the objects from one instance to another. The other way we can copy objects from one file to another is the one that we're going to be using in this tutorial. And what we need to do is this. Down here you have the File button, and it shows a list of the last 10 or 15 files that you've had open in Moment of Inspiration, and detail 3 and detail 1 as well as the Bogie frame file should be part of that list. Let's go ahead and open the detail 1 file. We can select this object, hit Ctrl C to copy it, and then go to File and open the Bogie frame again. Hit Ctrl V to paste that object in there. Then we need to save this file. And now let's open detail 03. Copy this object, open the Bogie frame file and paste this object in there. I'm going to save it. Rename this to detail 3. And I'm going to rename this one to detail 2, and I'm going to hide detail 2 for now. And let's deal with this one first. As you can see, this is way too big, so we need to scale this down a bit. Let's go to the front view, and I'm going to scale this and move it down, and we need to scale this down a little bit further. Let's move this over to here, and it's still a little bit too big. So something like this should be fine. And let's go to the top view. We also need to move this over to here. And let's go to our front view, or right view rather. And we can't really see anything here, so let's just go to the perspective view. And this looks about right. In the original object, this part, or the top of this part, was flush with this pipe here. But I'm going to leave it in the position it is, because making it flush with the surface of this cylindrical shape here means that we will have big problems adding fillets to the edges. In fact, in this area, it's not going to be possible. So I'm going to leave it in this position for now. And one thing we should do before we combine these two objects is fillet this one. And that's what I'm going to do. So with the object selected, I'm going to use fillet, and let's do a radius of 0.1, 0.08. That's still a bit big. Let's try 0.06. And I think that looks okay. And I don't think we need to move this object any higher than it is. Let's try 0.07. And I think I like this better. So let's confirm this. And now we do need to move this up a little bit. So let's move it to maybe about here. And let's go back to the front view. I'm going to control drag a copy out, move it into position here. And now let's go ahead and select all three objects and do a Boolean Union. And there we go. We have a solid object. Now we can select these edges. I'll try and do a loop selection, and that's not really working. So unfortunately we need to manually select all of these edges here. Okay, and that is all of the edges that we need. let's go ahead and fillet those. And I'll bring the radius down to 0.5 maybe. And I think that looks good, so I'm going to right click to confirm that. Now let's go ahead and unhide our detail 2, and this one has changed from Bogie frame to detail 3, so I'm going to rename it to Bogie frame. And now let's select this object here, and I'll move it into position roughly and then scale it down, move it up and over a little bit and scale it up again a little bit. So something like this should be fine. Let's go to the top view. We also need to move this over to about here. And I think our object might be a little bit short. Let's go back to the top view. I'll just move this back a little bit. Maybe scale it up a little bit. Going to switch off object snap. Okay, so something like this should be fine. Let's just move it into position. I'm going to check the front view again, and I didn't scale it uniformly, so I have to undo that. Go back a couple of steps and then scale this up a little bit more. And it's still not uniform. Let's drag this up to here. I'll just go back a few steps. So that's a little better. Let's try to scale this more uniformly. Let's go back to the top view. We need to move this forward again to here. And that's looking good. And like before, I'm going to fillet the edges on this first. And somehow I managed to rotate this around, because this part here needs to be at the bottom. So let's go back to the front view and rotate this around 90 degrees. And in order to do that, I need to switch on straight snap. Okay, so that is better. And I still have this edge here at the bottom beveled. If you don't, this is the edge that you should bevel first before you, or fillet first before you fillet the rest of the object. So in my case, this is already beveled. Maybe I didn't undo that at the beginning of the video. So let's go ahead and apply a fillet to this, and a radius of 0.05 actually looks good to me, so I'm going to confirm that. Let's go ahead and select both of these objects, do a Boolean Union. There we go. Let's try and do a loop selection of these edges here, and this is working. And let's apply a fillet to these edges. And 0.05 looks good to me, so I'm going to keep that. Or we could try and make it a little bit bigger. 0.07. I'm going to confirm that. And that is our finished Bogie frame. Now let's go ahead and mirror this over to the back and to the left. And let's see if we can combine this and turn it into a single solid. So I'm going to select it and use the mirror tool. We also need to switch on object snap. So there we go. Let's select both of these objects, do a Boolean Union. And it's working, so we have a solid. Let's go back to the top view and mirror this over to the other side. Select both of the objects and do another Boolean Union. And there we go. So that is our finished Bogie frame. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you again soon.